So after my daughter and Ariel and I recorded the video that you are about to watch on raising kind of resilient kids, resilient, I don't really like that word, but it works in this case. Wall Street Journal came out with an article that says the University of Michigan has suspended first semester grades to try to curb a quote unquote mental health crisis among incoming freshmen. If you are thrown into a mental health crisis because you get a B or a C in a college class, you have problems. And that is indicative of parents doing a poor job at preparing you for life in the real world. So, Ariel and I discuss kind of the issue and some ways of raising kids who can deal with the day-to-day problems when they get into adulthood. So, I hope you enjoy the video.
I'm all in. Push your chips to the middle. I'm all in for the cards as they may. I'm all in. Push your chips to the middle. I'm all in. Go broke or get paid.
Well, welcome back to Parenting for the Long Run. You'll notice that I have my daughter Ariel here again, and she's slimmer than she was last time.
I'm not fat and pregnant anymore.
So she had a little girl, Eliana, and Eliana is also very slim, but active. So Ariel suggested that we, as in I, do a episode on raising I guess the buzz term is resilient children, just children who are able to kind of deal with the ins and outs of life. And she was prompted in that by some experiences that she has had recently. And so I thought, well, then it probably shouldn't just be me doing it. It should be both of us doing it. So we're going to have a conversation on that issue. Before we get started, let me go ahead and say a quick prayer, and then we will talk about raising kids that can deal with the travails of life. Lord, we thank you that you are the one who came and suffered on our behalf so that we could have life. I pray that this would be honoring to you, and that you would give Ariel and me wisdom as we discuss this topic, so that those who are listening might benefit from it and be able to apply it. Amen.
Amen.
So, give us a little idea of what prompted you for of the necessity for this topic.
Yeah, I just had a couple conversations with some friends this past week who were talking about, who kind of dropped some buzzwords about like generational trauma, things that triggered them, whatever. And in particularly a young girl that I've done some mentoring for was having some, relationship problems with a boyfriend, and ended up calling a suicide hotline. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, just because your boyfriend breaks up with you, you shouldn't, that shouldn't prompt like suicidal thoughts. That's really terrible. And I just thought, how is that the first response? Why don't you have tools to basically deal with this? It's a very difficult thing to go through a breakup, but it's also kind of a normal hardship of life. A lot of people go through breakups, and it shouldn't be shattering or life ending. Have your parents equipped you to deal with those hard things that come, because just regular life is hard. That's not something that's traumatic or extra difficult. It's not an extraordinary circumstance. And I had a lot of compassion for her, thinking like that was her very first. I mean, it probably wasn't her very first response, but to feel like she didn't have other other ways of dealing with that difficulty, and to the point that, like I said, she's feeling the need to call a suicide hotline for support. Like, that's terrible. So I started thinking through your and mom's parenting, and how it seems like right now, especially with social media, there's a lot of social capital in being a victim and in having trauma. Like, that's just a term that's thrown around on social media so frequently. And then there's kind of a hive mind around it. Like, you talk about your trauma and that gives you like attention. So everybody has trauma
and some credibility probably
they're dealing with. Yes. Yeah. And then your friends just kind of validate that trauma rather than maybe talking to somebody who has a little more maturity or life experience, who can maybe talk you through that and say, this isn't really trauma. This is a hardship, and hardships happen in life. Life is not easy. And so what's the biblical response to this? What's the healthy response to this? What's the mature response to this? And just reframing and refocusing your mindset to say, this problem seems this big, but it's really only this big, and how do you work through that problem?
Right. And I mean, even if it is a big problem,
right,
you don't address the big problem, you address smaller chunks of that problem.
Right. Well, and you only have to address what you can control.
Right.
And then everyone else is responsible for their own behavior.
And at least in my experience, the temptation is to have a lot of, well, okay, what if this happens?
Mm-hmm.
And I go through a lot of what ifs that never occur.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to raise children who deal with issues as they arise, I think is important. So you said, kind of raising tough kids. So that implies, I guess, that you thought that we at least raised some tough kids, but I'm trying to think, let's see, how did we do that? So do you know how we did that? Do you have memories of how we...
I have a couple examples, I think. And I mean, I do think, I feel like you and Mom have equipped me to be a pretty resilient person, a pretty self-reliant person. And I mean, sure, tough, be tough. And I think I was thinking through just doing sports and how pushing yourself in sports naturally push you to be stronger, right? Like, that's kind of the whole point. And obviously we did running, but I think football or soccer or anything,
I'm not
maybe
sure
not
about soccer. Maybe not soccer.
Dad has a
communist football, we call it.
Oh my goodness. But you're doing workouts as a team, you have a coach, or maybe your parents are encouraging you in that as well. And you're constantly pushing yourself to improve. You're pushing your body to be stronger, right? Like with track, you're trying to cut down your time. You're trying to, build more speed. You're trying to build more stamina for distance. And I think that translates well to having maybe mental and emotional fitness or strength, because once you've achieved a certain goal that you didn't think you were capable of physically, that strengthens your mind, because now you've overcome a hurdle in your own mind where you're like, wow, I did that. I am capable of that. And it gives you some confidence in your own abilities and some confidence to maybe use in other situations where you say, I'm capable of more than I thought I was, right? I can expect more out of myself. And I think that really does transfer to emotional and probably spiritual strength also, where you just have a confidence that, you know what, this is something that's very difficult, but I am capable of doing that.
And I think one thing you mentioned in particular regarding that was doing intervals. Mm-hmm. So interval training, if you don't know what interval training is in running, typically we would have the kids run 400 meters. So a lap around the track in a time that is challenging but doable. And then they take about 2-minute break, and they do that again. And they might do that 6 to 8, sometimes 10 times. Well, about the third time through, you're like, okay, I've had enough of this. But if you still have 3 or 4 left,
Right.
you have to just kind of
Get it done.
bear down Arizona, as we used to say.
Yeah.
And you said that you actually used that when you were in labor.
Yes, I definitely use that mindset in labor. So something my siblings and I always talk about, we like trick our minds when we had to do interval workouts where you'd never count the one you were on and you never counted the last one because it would take care of itself. So if you had 8 to go, you really only had 6 to go. And you just keep that mindset the whole time. And it makes it feel a little bit more manageable. And we all did that. I don't know if we ever talked about that, but we talk about it now. And I did that in labor because I was like, I can only focus on the contraction I'm in right now. If I thought about how long this was going to take, how many contractions I was going to have left, I think I would have needed an epidural. I would have just been done. I would have been so overwhelmed. So I just kind of determined in my own mind, I'm just going to think about the contraction I'm in and nothing else, and get through that one contraction. And once I was through that next contraction, I take my little break. And when the next one comes, I'm just in that very moment. And I think that really helped me have a successful labor and just helped me to stay strong mentally through that, through something that was difficult.
So then the question arises, okay, how do we get from cross-country training to parenting in that regard? We're not going to have our kids run intervals, probably. Well, I might, but most people won't. But I think I had some experiences in this regard at a recent VBS we had, where there was a 5-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old who was having meltdowns, call them meltdowns, as Paul Simon would say. I think he said breakdowns, but anyway, I digress. When things didn't go his way. So, we were playing a game where if you get tagged, you have to go to a place and wait for somebody to free you. Well, he got tagged and he just, oh, this is terrible. Oh, geez, I'm like, really? And so I think his mom started to intervene, but I just told him, hey, get over there and you knew the rules up front, and go stand in that corner of the captivity area. We called it the wolf's den. And when you're done crying, you can come play again. And so he started to kind of settle down. So I went over, talked to him again. Hey, you just have to play by the rules like everybody else. And so then he settled down. I had a kid free him, and he did okay the rest of the day. Next day, same thing. Something goes wrong. He starts to have a meltdown. I walked up to him and said, hey, you have to stop crying now. And I counted down 3, 2, 1. Guess what? He stopped crying. And I think the difference between me and his parents was, one, I wasn't his parent. And I know from my own memories, it was easier for me to demonstrate
helps, right?
trauma, if you want to say that, or throw a fit. That would be what my parents would have called it, in front of my parents, than it would have been in front of a stranger, right? But sometimes we as parents, I think, cater to that. And so it's tough because particularly in this society, everybody's concerned, oh, people are going to think I'm abusive.
A mean mom, or,
right, yeah.
Yes.
If I don't respond to my child's temper tantrum. I mean, that's all it was in that instance. And so it's difficult, but you can do it if you are disciplined as a parent, right? But we have, and you mentioned this, and so I'll give you credit, all these buzzwords in our society, like we have, PTSD, like you have PTSD from some event that like everyone's like, you have PTSD. Everybody's gone through that. Or generational trauma.
Right.
Isn't that
Right.
one that
Yeah.
one of your coworkers used recently?
Mhm.
That kind of give us license, or give us allow us to give our kids license
Mhm.
to kind of just
Yeah, I think
refuse to deal with
right.
situations.
I think those terms, they're just so misappropriated. You can't say you have PTSD that your parents made you take out the trash when you were a kid. Like, that's not PTSD. But people just use it in such menial situations or whatever. And I think, kind of what we were discussing previously before recording this was that when you can apply one of those buzzwords to your situation, it almost gives you an out so that you don't have to change anything in your situation. It's like, this problem's so much bigger than me. I just can't deal with it, or I don't have to. Instead of saying, this is what's happening, and here's how I can either modify my behavior to change the situation, remove myself from the situation, or expect something else of someone to modify their behavior, and not make excuses. It's an easy way to make excuses. And I think a lot of times we do that now within society. We label something, and then that way we don't actually have any self-responsibility in that.
And it's aggravated if there's a psychological term that you can put to it.
Correct.
So if you have, what is it? If you can't pay attention to people.
ADHD.
ADHD, thank you. Me and acronyms sometimes don't get along. If you have ADHD, well, you can't expect your child to sit still and listen. Oh, okay, define sit still, right? Ariel's brother, Michael, he would sit still and do his schoolwork. His leg would just be going like this the whole time.
He'd barely be in his chair.
Yeah. And it drove my wife absolutely batty. But I told her, hey, he's a boy.
Right.
Okay? He's getting his schoolwork done, and he just wants to go out and do stuff. Okay? But if you had allowed some psychological diagnoses to kind of overwhelm your discipline in that situation, it was that, well, maybe, I guess we just give him drugs.
Right. Or you would just say, oh, he has ADHD, and then you don't actually expect him to sit there because now he has this excuse, and, certainly some people have ADHD or, different things that make life more difficult for them. However, even within that, there needs to be an expectation of, this is appropriate, proper behavior. This is what we expect out of you, so that there's like a clear line for kids, like this, when we're doing school, we sit at our desk and we do our schoolwork, and then we can go play or whatever, rather than just saying, oh, I guess I can't expect that of my child because of this scenario or this,
right.
This problem that they have. So I think that's really where discipline comes in, where it's just like, okay, here's what mom and I expect of you, or here's what dad and I expect. And that way kids understand, like, okay, this is the framework I have to work in. And they're overcoming their own tendencies too. Like, there's, just kind of like I was talking with sports, you're overcoming something physically. There you're overcoming something mentally, where you're like, okay, yes, I got my schoolwork done. I sat there, I didn't get in trouble. Mom's happy. Now I can go play, and once you start those building blocks, then eventually you feel like you have some mastery over your own tendency to get distracted, right? Or agitation.
Yeah, another one that, well, let me go back to that first. So when you're doing that, again, there has to be reasonable expectations.
Absolutely.
Right? If Michael is not going to sit down for 2 hours straight
Right.
to do work.
Right.
He might do it for 45 minutes, but then he was going to have to get up
You
and
need a
do
break.
something.
Absolutely.
And so parents need to be sensitive to that. And obviously, we're talking about a homeschool situation here,
Which is totally different than
which
at school.
I advocate, and maybe we'll do something on homeschooling at some point. But at any rate, but the another issue that has come up, and I think that kind of robs children of their ability to deal with issues, is the whole bullying issue. So, I'll sometimes read things about kids being bullied online. Like, you were bullied online? What they like say they were going to punch you in the nose? I mean, my mom used to tell me, and it's true, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, right? The point was, people are going to say all sorts of bad things about you going through life. Get over it. Why would you allow them that power over you? And if it's not online, if it's in-person bullying, where it's actually physical bullying, the issue that has arisen is many of the schools have a quote-unquote zero tolerance policy. So if you stand up to a bully, you're going to get in trouble. Well, I don't care.
Right. Right. In that case, you kind of have to just have your kids back. Like,
yeah.
I mean, you and Mom kind of always told us, if, you're not going to get in trouble for standing up for somebody else. Like, or at least that was just kind of, the rule. Like, you're not going to get in trouble for defending your siblings, right? So, I mean, maybe we all got in trouble together occasionally, but
there was a gang, gang warfare at the park.
The playground.
Yeah. But other than that.
Oh my goodness.
So,
well, I do, to your point about online bullying, I do think there is kind of a systemic problem because so many kids are on social media and the internet so young.
Right.
And it's very easy to be mean to people when you're typing it on, out, when you're chatting on a video game or something. And I think that is very damaging to kids because a lot of kids, especially the younger it happens, you do not have that self-confidence to say, that's not true about me. That's not true about the situation. I shouldn't feel hurt by that because it's not true.
Right.
And so I think that's also just something, that you mature over time to be able to make that determination. But a lot of kids, because they're so internet
consumed.
Exactly. There becomes this blurred line between what's real and what isn't, almost, and so I do think the online bullying, I mean, it is a big issue because they don't have maybe the tools to say, like I said, this isn't true about me.
If that is where you are getting all of your positive reinforcement.
Yes. If that's where you're getting your affirmation, then
you're going to be much more susceptible to that.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
My argument would be keep your kids off electronics. Get them a book, send them outside to play in the yard or in the street. We played in the street. But yeah, I'm reminded of another example with Michael, where this was in cross-country practice, that there was a kid who was just always calling him Mikey, and I could tell it was beginning to get on Michael's nerves. And the kid was, I mean, I liked the kid, but he wasn't a very good runner, and he was kind of goofy. His family life was not the best, I guess. And so one time I got out of the car. I was walking up to cross-country practice, and I saw him walking there, and I said, hey, Scott. And he turned around and I said, just so you know, I don't care if Michael gets suspended. And he was like, and guess what? No more name calling. And I didn't care. And at some point you have to say, hey, if there's a bully or if there's some kid who's just will not take
Right.
the correction, you may have to get physical with them. Do I recommend that? I'm not saying.
Well, I think there is, you have to have your kids back and say, it's okay to stand up for yourself, you know, and you're not going to get in trouble for standing up for yourself. You know, obviously, if you're out there picking fights on the playground constantly, you should probably be disciplined for that. But if you're, you know, if you're being bullied or whatever, and you finally tell that bully no more, then yeah, mom and dad are going to have, you're not going to get in trouble for that. You know,
Right.
Mom and dad are going to support you in that. So,
Yeah, and I've been a substitute teacher in the past, and I'm just telling you, missing a couple days of school is not going to affect your grades, okay? Just wipe that off
Right.
of the list of possibilities.
well, once again, that's like something, it's a really small thing
Yeah.
that everyone acts like it's a big thing. Like
Mhm.
if your kid got suspended from school, like, oh my gosh, that's just life altering. It's like, is it though? Like,
Yeah,
they're 7. Okay. We're
Right.
going to move right on past that. So, yeah.
So none of us got suspended or none of our kids got suspended at 7. Well, they were in homeschool, so
Right.
it would have been
we would
awkward.
have had to be in high school before we got suspended.
So I realized another thing that we did that probably helped build some character in you guys. I'm trying not to use the resilience word. When we went on vacations, you sometimes called them vacations from hell. I thought they were just vacations. Like there was one time we went to Vail and stayed in a condo, and I took the kids on a bike ride, and we're going along this bike trail, and then it dawns on me, hey, this is going up to the top of Vail Pass.
Have you ever been to Vail?
So you're starting at 10,000 feet, probably 9,000 feet.
And you're only going up. And how old were we?
Well, how old was Rachel when we moved to Virginia? She was...
I think Michael was 4 or 5.
Yeah,
and
okay.
so Rachel
Michael was 4 or 5, but he was on a tag along that I was
So
riding.
I think I was like 8 or 9, and
Yes.
Rachel was 10 or 11. So between
Right.
like 5 and 11, let's say.
Yes.
Yes.
And they were all on single speeds.
Yeah.
And every kid was crying at some point in that ride.
And dad's trick was always, okay, you see that tree up there? We're just going to go to that tree. And then we would get to that tree and we'd be like, okay, Dad, we're turning around. He's like, oh, no, like, not that tree, this tree.
Yeah.
And he'd point to the next one. And so after what seemed like at least a dozen iterations of that, finally Rachel goes, I'm getting to that tree and I'm turning around.
But they did kind of learn that they could get to that tree.
Right, absolutely. It
And-
did push us beyond what we thought. And we had a lot of fun. Like, obviously, going downhill, you're just speeding downhill on your bike. It's super fun. It made up for it.
Yeah.
Getting to play in the creek afterwards made up for it, except for Michael. He slipped and fell, got his pants all wet. He was very upset about it.
There was a little girl who saw him and his pants were all wet. And yeah, he has intergenerational trauma from that. But yeah, I mean, doing things in chunks teaches your kids to break up challenges into chunks, right?
Yeah.
And
that.
so if you can say, okay, a problem arises. All right, well, what can we do first, right? And then you kind of get them to do that first thing because the whole problem seems overwhelming. But then you break that big problem up into little problems.
Right.
I think that will enable them then when they face like real world problems, then they say, okay, I have to do something. What am I going to do?
Right. What can step 1 be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Israel, who is our second to youngest son, was, having some meltdown about something because things didn't go right. And so I'm not sure why I thought of this, but I called my brother-in-law, who is a former Navy SEAL, and actually retired as a chief in the SEALs. So he was he served in Vietnam and he retired in what, 2006 or 8? I don't know.
2008, I think.
Yeah. There was a period there where he didn't serve, but he served a long time. And I said, hey, Mike, I explained the problem. I said, can you tell Israel of a situation you had where things went wrong and you had to come up with a solution? He's quite, which one? Let's see. But that was instructive to Israel. It's like, oh yeah, I can sit here and whine about stuff, or I can say, how can I deal with this problem? Right? And so the more that we can get our kids to focus on the solution to the problem, the better off they'll be.
And I think with that, just like in our maybe like preteen, teen years, college years even, as your kids are getting older and they come to you and present you with a problem, I frequently would do that with mom and dad. Instead of just saying, I'm sorry, honey, like that's so tough. That sounds like a really tough day you had. Like there was never any of that. It was, as my sister says, the most infuriating phrase mom and dad ever used. Well, girl, that's not really that big of a deal. And at the time, it was like,
wait, that irritated
seriously?
Rachel?
That irritated Danielle.
Oh.
She called it, she was like, it was infuriating. But I think it's like, okay, it isn't a big deal because it seems pretty life altering to me right now, and then you and mom would kind of talk through, to your point, like, how do we break this up? What's step one? How can we address this? Or, it seems like a big deal, but like I said, you can't control everyone. You can only control your own behavior. So how does your behavior apply to this? So instead of just like validating my hardship, right? You and mom were very solutions based. Like, okay, so what's the proper response? What's the biblical response to this? How can you adjust your behavior or whatever to make this situation better?
Right.
And it then also builds trust where I think I can come to you because you haven't just commiserated with me, which is wildly unhelpful. Mm-hmm. You've helped me actually work through that problem. And I think a lot of parenting maybe now is more just commiserating because that's what psychologists tell parents they need to do. They need to like validate their kids or validate their kids' concerns. And it's like, well, that, you could say that sounds hard, like that, I'm sorry, that is difficult or whatever. But then you can't just leave them with that. There has to be another response also, right, of working through that. Because if your kids, kids always talk to their friends about stuff, right? And their friends are their same age. Like they do not have the wisdom to speak into that situation. So kids need to feel like, okay, my parents will help me with this. I trust them. I can go talk to them. And even clear into adulthood, I think all of us call you and mom for advice on things where, we're like, okay, this is a problem that I'm having in my marriage, or this is a problem I'm having at work. This is a problem I'm having with my kids, and talk through that because we can,
mm-hmm. Now, Ariel had a personal experience that kind of exemplifies this process. When we took you to NAU, I'm not sure why you decided to go to NAU, but Northern Arizona University, yeah, for those of you who don't know. Mm-hmm. So when we left Oregon to take her down, to NAU, we didn't know where she was going to stay. She didn't have a car.
Well, we thought we had a place lined up.
Right, we did think we had a place lined up.
We hadn't actually
seen it or anything.
Exactly.
And when we got there, we realized, no, this is not going to work. Mm-hmm. And all the dorms are filled. And yeah, it was
stressful.
It was very stressful. But we talked to my wife's sister and brother-in-law. They said, hey, call the alumni association and talk to them. And I did that. I'm like, I'm an alumni, so hey. And they gave me the number for someone. We got a room lined up within a day, got her classes all scheduled. And I remember her giving me a hug, and she turns around and walks off, and she's just, tears are coming down her face, and her lips are just, from the stress, just all covered in fever.
And cold sores. I had more cold sores on my upper lip than you have ever seen.
I was like, oh, wow. It was hard for a parent to just say, okay, I'm driving away now. But you got through that.
Right.
And
right. Yeah.
It was, again, that process, trusting the Lord to provide an answer to a problem, and then just dealing with the problem in bite-sized chunks.
Right. And Mom did mention something I think that's super important, is not shielding your kids from the hard things that you're going through, finding that balance between, okay, like, we don't tell them everything, but we at least tell them something, being honest about hardship. And then what's the biblical response to that? We're having this problem, or somebody's having this problem, and we're going to sit down and pray about it. We're going to offer this up to the Lord. And you and Mom, I think, did a very good job of that throughout us growing up, whether that was, financial hardship, somebody being sick, that sort of thing, sitting down and not saying like, well, Grandma's going to be okay, but, it was like, it was just, or Mom mentioned like when Gabriel had that tumor, like sitting down, talking about that, just saying, we're going to go see the doctor, but we're going to pray that the Lord heals Gabriel. And once you see how the Lord works, and you see that those prayers are answered, that you offered up as a family, it gives you the confidence in the Lord's provision and in his sovereignty to offer up the problems in your life as you are entering into young adulthood. I still do that at work. There are stressful situations at work, and I'm like, okay, let me just stop and pray about this and let the Lord deal with this. The Lord's going to deal with this, but I actually need to offer it up to him as well and let him deal with that for me. So,
and that doesn't mean that everything's going to turn out rosy.
Absolutely not. And it didn't always do that, but that's also a very, kids need to understand that, sometimes the Lord doesn't answer our prayers the way we want him to. And sometimes, bad things still happen, hardships still happen, right? That doesn't mean that God isn't good. That doesn't mean that that was something that you just didn't have enough faith or whatever. It just means that God had a different answer and a different plan for that. You don't necessarily know, what the long-term ramifications are or what God's overarching plan is in life, but you frequently enough see God working and answering those prayers, and you see his faithfulness. I think it grows your faith in him, but it also grows your capacity to confront challenges.
Right. And you see that you can navigate the challenges that life shows.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that was helpful. I hope you found it helpful. Thanks, Ariel, for joining me in this. And thanks to Miles for filming this. Be sure and share this video if you found it helpful. Like and subscribe. And we will see you on the next episode of Parenting for the Long Run.